The Wild West is known for its shootouts, and no image captures the imagination quite like a classic duel. But what did these famous gunfights really look like? Were they as dramatic and romantic as the movies make them out to be? Or was there more to it? First of all, it's important to understand that duels were not a common occurrence in the Wild West. While gun violence was certainly a problem, most disputes were settled with fists, knives, or even just a stern talking to. Only in rare cases did a disagreement escalate to the point where one man challenged another to a duel. When a duel was called, there was usually a strict set of rules that both parties had to follow. These rules varied depending on the time and place, but they often included details like the distance the men had to stand apart, how many shots they were allowed to fire, and even what kind of guns they could use. Once the rules were established, two men would face off against each other. This usually meant standing a few paces apart, with their guns drawn and ready to fire. There was often a tense moment of silence as the two opponents stared each other down, waiting for the signal to begin. Then, the signal would be given, usually a shout, a wave of a handkerchief, or even just a nod of the head. The two men would draw their guns and fire as quickly as they could. This was not a leisurely affair. Most duels were over in a matter of seconds. Contrary to popular belief, the goal of a duel was not necessarily to kill your opponent. Instead, the point was to prove your bravery and skill with a gun. If you managed to shoot your opponent without getting shot yourself, you were the winner. But if both men missed, or if they both managed to hit each other, the duel would often continue until one man was clearly the victor. Of course, not every duel was fought with honor. Some men cheated, using tricks like loading extra bullets into their guns or shooting their opponent before the signal had been given. Others simply didn't have the skill or nerve to stand up to a more experienced gunman. Here are some historical facts and stats related to Wild West duels. Duels were not as common in the Wild West as movies and TV shows might suggest. In fact, there were only about 50 recorded duels in the entire history of the Wild West. The most famous duel in the Wild West was probably the shootout at the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona in 1881. The gunfight lasted for about 30 seconds and resulted in 3 deaths and 3 injuries. Another famous duel involved Wild Bill Hickok, who killed a man named Dave Tutt in Springfield, Missouri in 1865. The two men had a disagreement over a poker game, and Hickok challenged Tutt to a duel. The shootout took place on the town square and ended with Hickok killing Tutt with a single shot. Dueling was illegal in many parts of the Wild West, but it was still seen as a way for men to settle disputes and prove their bravery. Some towns even have designated dueling grounds where men could settle their disagreements without breaking the law. The weapons used in Wild West duels varied, but the most common were Colt revolvers. These guns were popular because they were reliable and could fire quickly. Some men used rifles or shotguns, but these were less common in duels. While duels were often portrayed as a way for men to settle disputes with honor, many of them were actually fought over trivial matters like gambling debts or romantic rivalries. In some cases, duels were even used as a way for men to eliminate their enemies without facing legal consequences. Not all duels were fought to the death. In some cases, the two opponents would agree to use dummy bullets, which would create a loud noise and a puff of smoke, but wouldn't actually fire a lethal round. Dueling began to decline in popularity in the late 19th century as law and order began to take hold in the Wild West. By the early 1900s, duels were mostly a thing of the past. Did you hear that? The outlaws of the Old West left behind some unforgettable parting words. Don't miss out on their wit and wisdom. Tune in to our next video, the unforgotten, witty last words from the outlaws of the Old West.